So I was reading this report from Anna University the other day.
Mm-hmm.
It really caught my eye. It's about Tamil Nadu's mangrove cover. And, well, it basically doubled.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah. In just a few years, like between 2021 and 2024, it went from like 4,500 hectares to, get this, over 9,000. It's amazing.
That's really significant. Yeah.
It is. And for all our listeners out there, especially those gearing up for the UPSC exams, you got to keep an eye on these kinds of environmental shifts. Like, it's not just about the facts and figures, but about understanding the bigger picture of how our ecosystems are changing.
Absolutely. And it's a great springboard, actually, for a deeper discussion.
Right.
This news about Tamil Nadu's mangroves, it's a perfect opportunity to really dive into this whole fascinating world of mangroves.
I'm all for it. Let's go deep.
Okay, so in this deep dive, we're gonna unpack everything about mangroves. What they are, why they matter, like ecologically and economically, the threats they're facing, and the way forward, what we can do.
All the good stuff. Cut to the chase, right? No need to get bogged down.
Exactly. We're here to give you that core knowledge, that essential understanding you need.
All right, so first things first. When we say mangroves, what are we actually talking about? Like, paint a picture for us.
Okay, so imagine, the coastline where the land meets the sea.
Okay, yeah.
And it's not just a static line, it's dynamic, right? The tides come in and out.
The ebb and flow.
Exactly. So mangroves are these amazing trees and shrubs that grow in these intertidal zones, these kind of in-between zones.
Between land and sea.
Yeah, they're tough, they're salt tolerant, and they thrive in these tropical and subtropical regions where it's warm.
Okay, makes sense.
But it's not just the salt.
Yeah.
The soil there, it's waterlogged, low in oxygen, what we call anaerobic, and the water's kind of slow-moving, full of sediment.
It's like a muddy soup.
Right. And they just love it. There are different types of mangroves, too. Red mangrove, gray mangrove, rhizophora, all adapted to these challenging conditions.
Okay, so they're not just surviving, they're thriving. How do they pull that off?
They're like nature's coastal engineers,
I love it. Tell me more.
So think about where they grow. Tidal flats, estuaries, and deltas.
Okay.
All these places get loads of silt deposits and that twice-daily tidal flooding, right?
Makes sense.
But on top of that, they can handle intense sun, that harsh radiation, and manage in that oxygen-deprived mud. And, get this, they extract fresh water from salt water.
Whoa, wait, hold on. Back up a second.
Yeah.
They drink salt water and get fresh water out of it.
Essentially, yes. They have these amazing adaptations.
Like what? Like, how do they even breathe in that muck?
So some species, like Avicennia, have these things called pneumatophores.
Pneumatophores. Try saying that 3 times fast.
Yeah. Basically, they're like specialized roots.
Okay.
They grow upwards out of the mud, kind of like snorkels.
So they can breathe.
Yep, they take in oxygen from the air. Then you've got the prop roots of rhizophora.
Prop.
Yeah, those tangled, stilt-like roots, right? They give them amazing stability in the soft mud and against those currents.
Smart.
Plus, their bark often has lenticels, these tiny pores, for gas exchange and to reduce water loss. And some mangroves even have salt-secreting glands on their leaves, just pumping that excess salt out.
Wow. Salt-sweating trees. That is wild.
It is, isn't it? And we can't forget their root systems.
Okay, the roots. What about them?
They're so dense they trap sediment super effectively.
Oh, cool.
It helps them build up the land over time.
So they're creating their own little islands.
In a way, yes. And it also helps stabilize the coastline, preventing erosion.
Wow. So many things going on with these roots. Talk about multitasking.
That's mangroves for you. And their reproduction. That's pretty special, too.
Fill us in.
Many mangroves do this thing called viviparity. It's where the seeds actually germinate, they start to sprout while they're still on the parent tree.
On the tree.
Yeah. So instead of releasing a tiny seed that would get swept away or struggle in the salt water, they drop a more developed propagule, like a little baby mangrove, ready to go.
Wow, that's incredible. Like mini mangroves parachuting down.
Something like that. It's a brilliant adaptation for survival.
So, all right. We've got a good handle on what they are and how they've adapted, but where do we find these incredible ecosystems, like geographically speaking?
Okay, well, remember how they're sensitive to freezing temperatures?
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier.
So they're limited to those tropical and subtropical latitudes, basically closer to the equator.
The tropics, where it's warm.
Right. Now, globally, according to the FAO, in 2020, mangroves covered about 14.8 million hectares.
That's a pretty big number.
It is, but it's actually less than 1% of all the tropical forest area in the world.
Really? Less than 1%.
Yeah, most of them, the biggest chunks, are in South and Southeast Asia. Then you've got South America and Africa.
Interesting. So which countries have the most?
The top 5, Indonesia, Brazil, Nigeria, Mexico, and Australia. They hold almost half of the world's mangrove cover. Just those 5.
Wow, that's amazing. And what about India? Where do we stand?
Well, the 2023 Indian State of Forest report, it says India has about 4,992 square kilometers of mangroves.
Okay.
It's about 0.15% of India's total area.
Right.
We have some pretty significant mangrove ecosystems, though. In Odisha, you've got the Bisarkanika region.
Utarkanika, okay.
Then in Andhra Pradesh, the Godavari Krishna Delta. Also in Gujarat, Kerala, and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands.
So spread out all over the coast.
Yep. And of course, we can't forget the Sundarbans, the world's largest single mangrove forest.
Ah, the Sundarbans, yes. Everyone's heard of it.
And Bhitarkanika in Odisha, that's India's second largest.
That's pretty impressive. So tell me more about the Sundarbans. It just sounds, I don't know, magical and mysterious.
It's definitely a unique place. So its name, it comes from the Sundari tree, Heritiera fums. And it's this huge maze of mangrove forests and waterways in the delta of the Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna rivers.
Wow, 3 major rivers.
Yeah, it stretches from West Bengal in India all the way to Bangladesh.
Really? It crosses borders.
It does, and it's so ecologically important that 4 areas within it, 2 in India and 2 in Bangladesh, are UNESCO World Heritage Sites.
Wow, that's how you know it's special.
It is. And it's a real biodiversity hotspot. You've got over 260 bird species there, the Bengal tiger, the estuarine crocodile, the Indian python, tons of vulnerable and endangered species.
So it's like this safe haven for all this incredible wildlife.
Absolutely. A truly amazing ecosystem.
All right, so we've got a good grasp on the what and the where. But now for the big question. Why should why should anyone really care about mangroves?
This is where it gets really interesting, especially for those preparing for the UPSC exams. Mangroves, they're more than just trees and mud, right? They provide so many ecological and economic benefits.
Right, right.
For starters, they're incredible carbon sinks, like superstars of carbon sequestration.
Okay, explain that one.
So their soil, remember, it's all anaerobic and waterlogged.
Yeah.
That actually slows down decomposition of organic matter.
Okay.
Which means they store carbon at a much higher rate than many terrestrial forests.
Ah, so they're locking away all that carbon.
Exactly. On average, about 394 tons of carbon per hectare.
That's a huge number.
It is. That's why they're called blue carbon sinks, vital in the fight against climate change.
So they're like climate change warriors.
In a way, yeah. And there's more. They're also crucial for coastal protection.
I've heard about that. Like they're protect against storms and stuff, right?
They're like natural self-repairing seawalls. Their roots and branches, they all act as buffers against storm surges, tsunamis, even coastal erosion.
Wow.
Studies show they can reduce wave energy by like 5 to 35% and flood depths by 15 to 20, sometimes even up to 70% in certain areas.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a big deal with climate change and rising sea levels.
It's huge. And for coastal communities, it's life-saving, literally.
And I know mangroves are teeming with life, right?
Absolutely. Biodiversity hotspots, that's what they are. In India alone, they support over 5,700 species.
5,700.
That's across 21 different phyla, major groups of organisms.
Okay.
All those iconic species, the Bengal tiger, crocodiles, pythons, and over 260 bird species.
Oh, yeah, the birds. I always forget about the birds.
Plus, they're vital for food security.
Absolutely.
They're like nurseries for a huge amount of aquatic life. Like 800 billion fish and other species every year depend on mangroves at some point in their lives.
So that's directly impacting global fisheries then?
Exactly. And for coastal communities, they provide resources too, like honey, fruits, leaves. They support livelihoods and traditional ways of life.
It's amazing how these ecosystems are so interconnected with everything.
That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah. But with all these benefits, I mean, it's hard to imagine anything threatening them. But what are the biggest threats they face right now?
Sadly, there are quite a few.
Okay, tell me.
Land conversion is a big one. Think about it. Coastal areas are prime real estate.
Yeah, that's true.
So they're often converted for other uses. The State of the World's Mangroves report for 2024, it highlighted this.
Okay.
Aquaculture, especially shrimp farming, that caused about 26% of mangrove loss globally between 2000 and 2020.
Okay, 26% just for shrimp farming.
Yeah. And then agriculture, things like oil palm plantations and rice cultivation, That was a whopping 43%.
Wow, that's alarming.
And then there's the more traditional threats, unsustainable timber extraction, for construction, for making charcoal.
Right.
That still causes a lot of damage.
So basically, we're chopping them down and squeezing them out for our own needs.
Yeah, in a nutshell. And then there's pollution.
Ah, yes, pollution. Can't forget about that.
Oil spills are a huge problem, like what happened in the Niger Delta.
Oh, yeah, terrible.
Devastating for mangroves. They can really hinder regeneration, and disrupt the whole ecosystem.
I bet.
And then we've got invasive species.
Ugh. Invasive species. Always causing trouble.
They can be a real nightmare. One example close to home is Prosopis juliflora.
Prosopis juliflora. Okay, what's that?
It's this invasive plant that's spread all over mangrove areas in Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka.
Oh, no.
It outcompetes native species, messes with the soil salinity, reduces freshwater availability, and just makes it way harder for the native mangroves to bounce back.
It sounds like it's wreaking havoc.
Yeah.
So, considering all these threats, what can we actually do? How can we protect these incredible ecosystems?
The way forward. Well, it has to be a multi-pronged approach. We need a mix of conservation and sustainable practices.
Makes sense.
First off, we need a strong legal framework. Stricter laws against deforestation, against pollution, and better regulation of coastal development. That's key.
Yeah, got to have the rules in place.
But it's not enough just to have laws.
Right.
We need enforcement.
Yeah.
And we need local communities involved.
Community involvement, I like that.
Giving them a stake in conservation, ecotourism, or programs where they can adopt and care for specific mangrove areas.
Yeah, get them invested in protecting their own backyard. So what about science and tech? What role do they play?
They're crucial. We need more research into things like phytoremediation.
Phytoremediation.
Using plants like mangroves to clean up pollution. And exploring their medicinal uses, finding sustainable ways to use them.
Okay.
Technology can help too. Drones, for instance, to monitor the forests in real time. Artificial intelligence to detect illegal activity. It's all about being proactive.
So like high-tech forest guardians.
Yeah. And then there's biorestoration, actually going in and rehabilitating those degraded areas, making sure we have a good mix of species for resilience against climate change.
So it's not just protecting what's left, it's also bringing back what's been lost.
Exactly. And on a broader scale, sustainable coastal development is essential. Eco-friendly infrastructure, responsible aquaculture, and integrating mangrove conservation into all our planning.
Thinking about the long term.
That's the key. And international collaboration is huge, too. Agreements like the Ramsar Convention, the Blue Carbon Initiative, these platforms bring countries together to protect these vital ecosystems.
Okay, so it's a global effort.
It has to be.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about mangroves, and I'm sure our listeners have too. It's clear how vital they are for our planet, for the climate, for biodiversity, for coastal communities.
They really are incredible ecosystems.
And while the news about Tamil Nadu doubling its mangrove cover is definitely encouraging, it's also a reminder that we need to keep pushing, keep working to protect and restore these areas.
Absolutely. And it brings up a really important question for all of us, especially in India. How can we balance development with the need to protect these ecosystems? How can we be innovative and find solutions that work for both people and the environment?
Yeah, a big question, but a crucial one, especially for our UPSC aspirants.
Right. This is the kind of topic that connects to so many areas of the UPSC syllabus. Environmental conservation, coastal ecosystems, disaster management.
It's all intertwined.
It is. And understanding these connections is essential for those exams.
So for all our listeners out there, if you found this deep dive helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. And let us know in the comments if you have any questions or if there are other topics you'd like us to explore in future deep dives.
We'd love to hear from you. Your feedback helps us create the content you need.
And lastly, just to remind everyone, the information we've discussed today is mainly based on a report from The Hindu. It's a great source for staying updated on these important environmental issues.
Definitely a valuable resource.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
See you next time.